study,
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
The best
of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? All right. Bring a date, your teen, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
Warning. This show contains material that some listeners may find troubling, including discussions of intense horror movie themes, explicit language, movie spoilers, and women speaking. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, horror fans. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Eleanor.
And welcome to Horror Sandbox, the podcast where we dig around in horror films and see what we can unearth.
That's right, Charlie. But before we get started with today's movie, can you tell me how you're coping with the horrors?
I am on vacation. We have taken a little cross-country road trip. We've made some stops to all kinds of places. We got to hit up some really cool museums that I've been wanting to take my daughter to now that she's old enough to appreciate them. So we've seen some airplanes, some dinosaur bones, some animals. She's having the time of her life. And now I'm recording this episode from my childhood bedroom, which is wild.
The one you can see ghosts from?
No, not the haunted house. No, this is actually the one that makes me, I know my original house was haunted because when we moved to this house, I sat in the empty room that was going to be my bedroom and I just breathed and I was like, gosh, it just feels so light here. And that's how I knew that my first house was haunted.
You're like, it was either that or the asbestos. I don't know.
Could be both. I'm sure there's asbestos in the first as well. But yeah, so it's been a fun time. It's been very relaxing. It's been a good trip. But yeah, so how have you been coping?
I just finished a really fun spooky book. It's called The Haunting of Payne's Hollow by Kelly Armstrong. It's got that really fun trope of you only get your inheritance if you stay in this spooky place for a month, but there's also like a crime element and dark family secrets and some supernatural stuff. Mythological creatures. Like, it was a blast. I tore through it in like half a day. It was so good.
Oh, that sounds nice. Where I live, there's not a lot of independent bookstores. In fact, there's none. So one of the things I've been prioritizing is going to bookstores here. And I saw one and it's like this like read your own mystery and solve your own crime novel. And now I'm like just craving a mystery. So this sounds nice. This sounds like a good, maybe I'll look into this book.
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. So, okay, Charlie, we've got our coping out of the way. What are we digging into today?
I'm excited for this one. We are digging into Hokum from this year. The IMDb movie summary is a horror writer visits an Irish inn to scatter his parents' ashes, unaware the property is said to be haunted by a witch. It's written and directed by Damien McCarthy of Caveat fame.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! And it's starring Adam Scott, Peter Coonan, and David Wilmot. And we can't dig around in a horror sandbox without our trusty rusty tools. So, Eleanor, what is your Bloody Shovel Award?
Okay, for me, this is the first time I've ever had the I knew him before he was cool experience. Because, listen, you know this. I have been telling everyone with a pulse that they should watch Caveat if they like horror, to the point that I actually tricked you into starting this podcast with me so that we would talk about it. And and so to see this in theaters in the US and to see it get so much very well-deserved praise, I'm thrilled. And no, I don't actually know him, but I saw Caveat the year it came out, and then to see that director go from basically no budget to this, it's just so cool, and I really can't wait to see what else he does.
Oh, yeah, this is so fun. I'm so glad we've got to go down the Caveat and Hokum journey, and hopefully we'll do Oddity and whatever else he comes out with later.
Oh, we will.
Perfect.
But what about you? What is your Bloody Shovel Award?
My Bloody Shovel Award is that this movie contains the only man I'd ever do mushrooms with.
That's perfect.
Yes, oh gosh, I love him so much. He's just the most, I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. He's just the best. So let's get into it. This movie opens with a shot of a man and a young boy in worn clothing and armor, and they're walking through a desert. And I'm going to immediately pause and say this opening scene is so far from what I expected this movie to be that I literally texted you like the moment this started. And I was like, does Hokum open with a desert scene or did I buy the wrong movie? Because it is not Ireland.
I laughed when I got that because, yes, that clearly wasn't the famous deserts of Ireland in that opening shot. But I saw this in theater and I had not seen anything about this in the trailers because I famously avoid trailers when I can for horror movies so that I don't spoil anything. And I was super confused at first as well.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I knew it would be a little different than what I was expecting, but this is really out of left field. But no, it it all makes sense in a moment. So anyways, back to it. The man in the desert, he opens a glass bottle and he pulls out a map and then he puts it back in the bottle. And the man, he also takes off his armor at this point and he leaves his armor and his sword behind. And then they continue to walk, and as they're walking, they run out of water and it appears that things are getting pretty desperate. And then the scene cuts to the main character, Ohm, in his home, and he's writing an epilogue to a novel that he's writing on his laptop. And he reaches over and he takes a sip of whiskey from a cup and then he puts it back down. And the whiskey cup leaves a ring on the table. And then it cuts back to the desert scene. And the man and the child wandering in the desert come across a red circle in the sand.
I really liked this transition shot, and I love how I think it introduces the magic circle very early.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know a lot about this movie either, but I knew circles came into play, like in some way. So seeing this circle, I was like, oh man, already we're dealing with circles. Though we don't know what the circle in the desert means, but that's okay. So he then says they're close to whatever they're looking for. And then he goes to open the bottle back up with the map in it, but the lid stuck shut. And him and the boy desperately attempt to open it or find a rock to break it with, and they can't. The man then asks the boy to step in front of him, and he raises the bottle over his head, and it seems like he's gonna smash it over the boy's head and kill him to break the bottle. But right before he does, it cuts back to Ohm, and he hears a noise behind him, and he turns around to see like a small log rolling across a shelf next to a little wood furnace. And he looks back forward, and then he sees someone standing in the dark on the staircase in front of him.
It's such a creepy shot, but it's literally just someone standing there, but it's unsettling.
It's super like they don't move at all. It's super creepy. And then he's just staring at the person on the stairs, and then he slowly turns the lamp towards the stairs. But once the light hits the spot where the person is standing, there's nothing there. And then all of a sudden, this seemingly very dead woman appears behind him and is staring at him. And we'll talk about more about how we see this specific figure more throughout this movie. But at this scene, she looks her worst. She looks like she's decomposing. She looks angry. She's bloody. She's dirty. It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's a very jarring image pretty early on. So you kind of know the tone of the movie.
Yes. And then from this scene, it cuts to Ohm opening a box. It has some postcards from Ireland, some comics, and then a kind of tall wooden box inside of it. And it shows Ohm's parents' ashes sitting over on a shelf in the room. And then he cuts the lock off of the wooden box, and inside of that box is a small gun. And he grabs the gun and he looks at it, and then he looks at the ashes, and then he looks at a postcard that was inside the box, and it's for a hotel in Ireland.
There is also a vintage TV Guide magazine. Do you remember those? My grandmother always had them around.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I've seen them at like a grandma's house. That's where I've seen them.
This one has the donkey guy from the kids' TV show from his childhood on the cover, and it says, Jack the Jackass, still a family favorite, which is hilarious. But also, one of those postcards is a horned sheep.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was a horned sheep. But I do have to say, Jack the Jackass is, even before he's a creepy character, he's a creepy character. Not a fan.
Terrifying.
Absolutely. So after this, there is a gorgeous shot of a windy road in Ireland, and we see Ohm driving on it.
And then during this absolutely gorgeous overhead shot, we hear a man singing, and it sounds like a very old song. And it's actually lines from a poem called Oft in the Stilly Night by an Irish poet named Thomas Moore. He was a champion of Irish freedom in the 1800s, and he was considered the national bard of Ireland during his lifetime. And the poem he's reading is about remembering your childhood fondly from the position of an adult who's now pretty brokenhearted, which kind of fits. And I also think it's really neat how this piece of Irish culture and history gets presented early on in the movie.
I'm so glad you looked into that because I heard the song and I was like, I bet this is important. But I didn't look into it, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it comes up later too, and we'll talk about it then.
Ooh, nice. So as he's driving, he notices a random man in the woods staring at a tree on the side of the road. And then he finally pulls up to this small hotel, and there's a man outside washing a car. And as Ohm walks past, he notices a crossbow next to a dead goat and asks the man why he shot the goat. And he says they're pests and jump on the cars and poop everywhere. And Ohm's just like, okay, you could have shoot them off. And the guy's like, no, they're stubborn. And he's like, okay, whatever. And then he goes inside. And when he steps inside, there's an old man telling a story to two little boys.
I don't know if you heard this, but when he starts his story, he says fado, fado. And that's actually Irish for a long time ago.
Oh, I did hear that, but I didn't know what it meant. So
I think in the theater, I wondered if he was calling the boys fado, like some nickname. But no, it's Irish for a long time ago.
A long time ago. That's cool. He then goes on to tell the story, and he says a long time ago, an old Cailleach, or a witch, lived in a stone hut in the woods. And he says the witch would put doomed travelers under her spell and then shackle them before taking them into the underworld.
Yeah, he says the Cailleach can dazzle travelers and make them as vulnerable as lamplit game. And as he's telling the story, he's not standing, he's in a wheelchair, but he and the boys are kind of positioned around this little table that's in the hotel lobby. And it has one of our favorite things ever, a trauma diorama. And it depicts like a mossy, woody hill with a cave in it. And it has these really terrifying little porcelain-looking figurines. And then we pan into and out of close-ups with these figurines while he's telling this story.
And they're pretty cool. Like, they're creepy, but I think I'd own one. I think they're kind of fun. He then goes on to tell the story, and he says, sometimes a hand would reach out from the Underdark and rip off a piece of their victims. Most notably, he tells the little boy that sometimes they take something that was more valuable to a boy than his eyes or ears. And then Ohm interrupts him by ringing a bell and tells the kids to go find their parents and to stop talking to strangers. All of a sudden, the manager, Mal, rushes out from the back room and the old man scolds him. And did you get the vibe here that this might be the first inclination we get that Mal's back there sleeping with Fiona in this scene?
No, I think maybe if I'd thought about that on my second, third, or fourth watch, I might have, but I didn't. I really didn't. I think you might be right, though.
Yeah, I didn't notice it till like my third rewatch. And then like the way he kind of comes out all like disheveled, and they were at least making out back there. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, probably. Speaking of Fiona, if you look really closely at one of the figures, little porcelain figures who is being captured by the Cailleach, I think it looks like she might be pregnant, one of them.
So I was looking at art for this movie, and it showed up a close-up of these figurines, and the one is like holding her belly a little bit. So I think you're right.
Yeah, it's not obvious. She doesn't look like, heavily pregnant, but the way she's holding herself made me think of that.
Agreed. Yeah, I had the same thought after the fourth rewatch. So Ohm then tells the old man to mind his own business, but he replies saying it is his business. He's the owner of the hotel, and we learn his name's Mr. Cobb. Ohm checks in while Fergal, who is the guy who shot the goat outside, comes in and tells Mal to lock up the crossbow.
And here we can tell that Mr. Cobb doesn't think very much of Mal because he calls him a maneen, which is an Irish word for little man. And honestly, I want to see that used more.
I'm adding it to my vocab. Manine. So he then mentions that there's going to be a Halloween party the next night and says it'll be a bit of a crack, which is the Irish way of saying a fun time. And Ohm then says, can I get a room as far away from the crack as possible because he has work to do? And Mal then recognizes Ohm and says his son is a fan of his writings. He asks if he can bring in a book for him to sign, but Ohm says no.
Yeah, we're establishing really early that Ohm is a dick.
He's such a dick. He's so easily hateable in this scene. Ohm then goes to his room and he walks past an elevator, and at the elevator, he sees Fergal talking to Mr. Cobb, telling him that the gate in front of the elevator is built to last and nothing is getting through it. Ohm then continues to walk down the hallway and gets lost, and a woman that we learn is Fiona walks around the corner and asks if he's lost. He responds by saying, what does it look like? And she says, well, with that attitude, it looks like you can stay lost.
Team Fiona.
Oh, I love her. Yes, I wish we could have gotten more of her. Ohm then apologizes and Fiona shows him his room. He asks Fiona where the big red wood is and shows a picture of his mom standing in front of this large tree. It then cuts to another scene where Ohm goes to this redwood tree and begins to spread his mom and dad's ashes under the tree. And the way he spreads them, it's obvious that he likes his mom a lot more than his dad. And then he turns around and he starts to return to the hotel. And as he's walking back, he sees the dead goat from earlier in the woods. And he approaches it. And when he does, a kind of homeless looking man appears there and he asks, who are those? Referring to the ashes that Ohm just put under the tree. And Ohm just replies by saying, there is folks. And the guy, who we learn is Jerry, offers him some milk to drink.
I will not accept milk from a stranger or really anyone in most circumstances, but this one in particular would give me a lot of pause.
I agree. In this circumstance, before I knew Jerry and who Jerry was, I certainly would not take his mystery milk. But also, I hate milk, so I would never drink it in general.
Same.
Yeah. But the man then hands Ohm a bottle with a clear liquid in it, and Ohm asks if it's moonshine. Jerry calls it Ishkabaha or Posheen, or water of life.
Yeah, poutine or ishkabaha in Gaelic, those eventually became the English word for whiskey. The ishkabaha becomes whiskey. So starting around the 15th century, this was made in Ireland from crops like cereals and potatoes and beets. So probably a little bit different from the whiskey most people drink today, but that's where the word comes from.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, and the fact that it tastes a little bit different, Ohm takes a sip of it and then says, oof, that is definitely moonshine. And then Jerry then offers him some magic mushrooms as well, which we find out he mixes in with his goat milk.
Yeah. I love the line Jerry has here. He says, well, if you're ready to defeat the demons and not just run from them, magic shrooms. And I'm like, oh my God, you are adorable.
I know. And again, I don't think in this moment I would take shrooms from Jerry, but after getting to know him, there's very few people I would trust to have a trip with, and I think Jerry would be one of the few.
I think he would be a gentle guide.
I think so too. So then Ohm asks him what he's going to do with the goat, and Jerry says he'll bury her. He then tells Ohm they climb in the cars because they like to eat the mushrooms as well, and when they're high, they go looking for reflective surfaces because staring into your eyes while on mushrooms deepens the trip. He then says it can be dangerous, and Ohm says especially if there's an asshole with a crossbow nearby.
Foreshadowing.
I know, the worst foreshadowing. Jerry then says not to even get him started and that he's almost fought Fergal many times over the killing of the goats. Ohm then goes back to the hotel where there's a goat on the same car as earlier, and then it cuts to him at the bar talking to Fiona. While he's talking to Fiona, he's telling her about the end of his book, and Fiona laughs and asks him why he would write something so bleak. Ohm says it's meant to be challenging, and she says, well, then she won't be reading it. He then makes a joke how, well, most of his books get turned into really bad movies if she'd prefer to watch that. He tells Fiona that she reminds him a lot of his mom when she was young, and he shows her the picture of her. He tells her that his mom and dad came to this hotel for their honeymoon, and they always wanted to come back. Fiona asks why they didn't, and he says that his mom died a few years after that. He tells her she was murdered by being shot in the face when she came home from work, and the person who shot her was too young to be punished, but they should have hung him.
Yeah, speaking of bleak, right?
So bleak, yeah. The whole first half of this movie is pretty dark. Well, the whole movie's pretty dark. He then says his dad turned into a monster after that and drank himself into an early grave. Then he asks why the honeymoon suite is closed, and Fiona tells him it's been closed for a long time because it's haunted by a witch, and Mr. Cobb locked him in there years ago. Fiona says she has asked Mal many times to slip her the key to check it out, but he hasn't because he's far too afraid of his father-in-law, who is Mr. Cobb. Ohm asks if she's afraid of the witch, and Fiona tells him she'd just take chalk and draw a circle around herself because that's how you protect yourself from a witch.
Yeah, and while she's explaining this, she shows him a book of Irish folklore that depicts someone doing exactly that. I looked it up, and unfortunately, this book is not real, and I am disappointed. But there are many others out there, so.
Yeah, it does look like a pretty cool book, but I bet you could find one that looks just as nice. Ohm then says if he ever feels like he's being chased by a witch, he'll look for a psychiatrist, not a piece of chalk. Then we meet Albie the bellhop, who arrives and tells his story about the witch. It cuts to a scene where Albie is standing in front of the elevator when his hat blows off, and he turns around and lights the lighter and puts his hand inside the gate with the lighter.
This is such classic Damien McCarthy. Yeah, go ahead. Stick your hand all the way into that dark hole where the monster is.
I know. I was yelling at him the whole time, but I was like, I learned that this is intentional. So he looks around and we get our first jump scare. We see these glowing eyes of what appears to be some kind of old woman. And then it cuts back and Ohm responds by saying the title of the movie, Hokum. And do you want to tell us what Hokum means here?
Yeah. So actually, have you ever heard that word before?
I don't think so. I think I've heard like hooey, which I think is like the same idea, but not hokum, no. Or fooey, maybe. I don't know.
I knew it meant nonsense, but the specific etymology is really fun. It's a play on the word bunk, which is short for the word bunkum, and that is a reference to Buncombe County in North Carolina, because supposedly a member of Congress was giving such a long and boring speech on the House floor that when his colleagues tried to get him to shut up, he said he needed to talk until he said something that would end up in the papers so that his constituents knew he was actually at work. And so, supposedly at one point he said, "I shall not be speaking to the House, but to Buncombe." So to make fun of him, nonsense, particularly long-winded nonsense, and like very performative nonsense, was called Buncombe. And then Buncombe evolved into kind of Hokum and Buncombe, kind of like hokey pokey or hocus pocus. It's just like a fun little wordplay.
That is so interesting. Well, I guess Ohm's not from Ireland himself. I definitely would not have guessed that its roots were English. Like, I would have guessed they're from Ireland. Yeah, American, yeah, specifically. Yeah, that's crazy. Fiona tells Albie she believes his story, and then she leaves to go get a delivery. Albie and Ohm have a conversation after that. Albie tells Ohm how he's a really big fan of his and relates to his characters on a deep level. Ohm says that's troubling since the stories are about deeply disturbed, desperate people. He makes a joke about how he has an idea for a new character, and then he grabs his recorder that he uses to record his ideas and says he's going to document it. He says his idea is an oblivious charisma vacuum who is completely incapable of reading a room.
Okay, we have established that Ohm is a dick, but that is a solid burn. Oblivious charisma vacuum incapable of reading a room.
I did like the charisma vacuum. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that vampire show. It's a funny
What
one.
We Do in the Shadows.
Yes, What We Do in the Shadows.
The energy vampire?
The energy vampire. Yes, that's exactly what I thought
What is his name? Is it Colin? Colin Robinson.
Yes, that one. It's so funny. That whole show is really funny, but he's amazing too.
It is really funny. And we have all worked with that man.
Oh my gosh. I worked with dozens of them. Albie then asks if he's writing the ending of the Conquistador trilogy, and Ohm says he's starting to think it's going to be open-ended. Albie then tells Ohm that he's a writer too. Ohm's a massive dick and asks if that means his bellhop attire is a costume. While he's saying that, Ohm puts a spoon into a pumpkin that's lit with a candle, and Albie asks Ohm if he'll take a look at his manuscript later, and Ohm says nope, and then he pulls out the spoon from the pumpkin and burns Albie's hand with it, and then kind of yells at him that he'll need thicker skin than that if he wants to be a writer.
Yeah, speaking of burn,
Yeah.
just gonna go ahead and not only insult, but assault somebody. Horrible.
Right, that's sort of like the first time where it goes way, way too far. Like, you can't just be burning people's hands. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And also, if he's a writer, at some point he was writing and not getting paid for it. So he should be sympathetic to that. But yeah, I think this is just, really establishing what a jackass he is. But really quick, I want to talk about Halloween because I always want to talk about Halloween. And specifically, I want to talk about the jack-o'-lantern in this shot. So most of the Halloween customs that we have in the United States were brought over by Irish immigrants in the 19th century. Jack-o'-lanterns were one of them, and they're based on the story of Stingy Jack. The story goes that Stingy Jack was a drunk and a cheat, but he was pretty clever. So clever that the devil decided to come for him. He appeared before Stingy Jack, who asked for one last pint before they go to hell. The devil, who is of course a fair man, agreed. But when it came time to pay the tab, Stingy Jack of course had no money, so he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin so Stingy Jack could pay and the devil could just turn himself back once the barkeep wasn't looking. But when the devil did this, Stingy Jack put him in his pocket instead, right next to the crucifix that he always carried, thus trapping the devil. Stingy Jack managed to get a few more tricks in with the devil and negotiated for more time on Earth. But eventually, it became time for Stingy Jack to depart this mortal coil, and he was barred from heaven, and the devil, who, like I mentioned, is really a gentleman, made good on his bargain to not take Stingy Jack with him to hell. So instead, he gave Jack an ember to light his way on the plains between good and evil, and Jack carved up a root vegetable, which is usually called a turnip, but was probably actually a type of rutabaga. And Stingy Jack became Jack-o'-lantern, and a tradition was born, and people would carve up root vegetables and put lights on them to ward off evil spirits. Now we use pumpkins in the United States because they are widely available around that time of year, but that carved turnip that Ohm uses to burn Albie in this scene is a very close rendering of a plaster cast of the traditional Irish jack-o'-lantern, which you can see on the website for the National Museum of Ireland. And because I can't resist, one more fun fact. Americans used to carve pumpkins and put lights on them as early as the mid-1800s, but guess for which holiday?
I don't know. I mean, pumpkins, that's like Thanksgiving-esque. Thanksgiving?
Yep, it's Thanksgiving.
Okay.
They would carve
Nice.
them up and display them on Thanksgiving. And I think we should bring that back because cornucopias are dull.
Oh, agreed. I mean, I love Thanksgiving, but I have pumpkins out. Now they're not carved, but I have pumpkin decor out at that time of year.
Charlie,
Yes.
can we please make a jack-o'-lantern this year that is a vicious uterus?
Yes. We have to make all kinds of Horror Sandbox jack-o'-lanterns.
Yes.
My whole house. Yes. Oh my gosh. I will say the turnip jack-o'-lantern, I have heard of it before, though I've never heard of this whole story. But the turnip jack-o'-lantern is disturbing. It is, but I love it.
Yeah, it's very creepy. That would, if I was an evil spirit, that might frighten me.
Yeah, it kind of almost looks like a little skull, whereas pumpkins are a little more cute.
And yeah, you can see it in this movie, but also the link to the museum that I mentioned will be linked as well, so you can go look at it. It's also, if you've ever looked up the history of jack-o'-lanterns, you've probably seen this image or something very similar.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen it before. So after this, Ohm goes to bed, but then he leaves some things at the bar.
And there's an exterior shot here where you see the hotel, and this is more classic Damien McCarthy. When the camera cuts away and does this shot, we can hear a fox cry in the distance.
The whole time I watched this movie, I was like, oh, chains, check. Crossbow, check. Fox, check. Like, he has so many amazing Damien McCarthy tropes.
Yeah, he does. It's good.
It is good. Fiona tries to return Ohm's items to his room, but he doesn't answer the door. She sees Albie and asks him to open the door because she has a bad feeling about it. She turns on the light and she sees Ohm hanging there from a beam in the ceiling. It then cuts to Ohm waking up in the elevator to the honeymoon suite, but everything is black and white and kind of grainy looking. He hears eerie wailing and closes the elevator door, but then the wailing gets louder. When the doors close all the way, his dead mom is standing there next to him again.
Did you think he had entered purgatory or something similar at this point?
I wasn't sure if it was like purgatory, but I definitely thought it was some kind of subconscious state of being and kind of like being in that in between, like in between this world, like a spirit world kind of thing. Kind of like poltergeist-esque, like wherever that girl was trapped. That's kind of where I pictured Ohm being.
Or where Stingy Jack is wandering.
Yeah, like that. It then cuts to normal again, and Ohm is taken to the hospital. And as he's there, a hand that appears to be his mom's grabs his shoulder and wakes him up. After that, Ohm returns to the hotel. No one is at the front desk, and eventually 2 men and Mal come out of the back room. Ohm asks Mal if they're closing, and Mal says it's the end of the season. Ohm says he just came to get his stuff, and Mal grabs it for him. Ohm asks who found him, and Mal tells him it was Fiona. He says he'd like to talk to her and apologize and asks for her phone number.
And this is the first time that we see Ohm start to soften a little bit and seem to show some humility, isn't it?
It is, and he does seem way softer here, but I think it makes sense because previously I think he knew that he was going to commit suicide that night, or at least during the trip there. So he probably wasn't being totally himself, or at least he didn't care in that moment how his actions would impact himself or others long term. Not to mention he was incredibly drunk. But now that he's not in that state anymore, like he's kind of making his apology tour is the way I saw it.
Yeah, I think so.
Mal then tells Ohm that Fiona's been missing since Halloween, which was weeks ago, and no one knows what happened to her. Ohm asks if someone took her, and Mal says, by whom? Mal then tells Ohm that the men who left earlier were the police, and they're actually looking for Jerry, because he was one of the last people seen speaking with Fiona, and he disappeared after his wife died under suspicious circumstances previously. He also hasn't been seen since Fiona went missing. Mal then tells Ohm to go home and says he'll call him if anything is discovered regarding Fiona. As he's leaving, Ohm runs into Fergal, who says, I bet you have a new appreciation for women's intuition. Ohm asks Fergal about Jerry, and Fergal says he obviously killed his wife. Why else would he be here living in a van in the woods for years? He then says Jerry will be back and Fergal will be waiting. Ohm asks if Fergal talked to Fiona that night and asked how she seemed, and Fergal says not herself, distracted and sad. Ohm asks if they searched the honeymoon suite because Fiona mentioned wanting to go up there, and Fergal gets kind of aggressive and says it's impossible because the gate's locked and Mr. Cobb has a key at all times. He then gets frustrated with Ohm and tells him that they might as well search the moon.
I mean, no, those are not the same. What an insane reaction. And also, hello, police negligence. If they really didn't check the blocked off part of the hotel where some staff, aka suspects, have access.
Right, I agree. It's nuts that they didn't go up there and check it out. And it seems really strange that they're so insistent that no one searched that one room. And I'm wondering if from Fergal's perspective, it's like a pride thing, because earlier in that movie, we see Fergal telling Mr. Cobb no one could possibly get in or out of that elevator. And like, he doesn't want to be proven wrong.
Yeah, and maybe because Fergal's about to tell us his family's cops, so maybe they have some influence and can kind of be like, yeah, you don't need to search that area.
Right, but still, I agree that I'd be like, well, what's it hurt to look up there? Like, just let us up there, man. But yeah, he's a dick. And then Ohm asks if the police have talked to Fergal, and Fergal tells him that he talks to them every day because they're his cousins. He then tells Ohm to get in his car and fuck off back to the airport.
I loved this part. He says, you should get back to the airport while you still look like your passport photo. I'm like, wow. It's yet another amazing burn.
Yeah, there's some good lines in this movie. Ohm does go back to his car, and while he's buckling himself in, he looks at the knife type thing that Fiona used to cut him down with.
I think this is where he also finds the flask that was in his room, right? And it's still full.
Yes, I think so, with all of his belongings, his flasks there. So he drives down to where he last saw Jerry's van, and he looks around it. Inside, he finds the folklore book that we talked about earlier that belonged to Fiona. When he shuts the door, Jerry's standing there, and Jerry says, Fiona would be glad you woke up. Ohm asks Jerry if he has anything to do with Fiona's disappearance and says the police are looking for him. Ohm also mentions that they're saying he killed his wife, and Jerry says it's true. He mentions that his wife was very ill and in a lot of pain. Ohm then mentions he has Fiona's book, and Jerry says, well, they were friends, so she let him borrow it. Ohm tells Jerry to come with him, and they'll just go talk to the police, but Jerry says that the police won't believe him because he knows she's dead. Jerry says that 2 nights ago, he went to the hotel to stock up on medication that the guests had left behind and that he saw Fiona there. It then cuts to a flashback of Jerry at the hotel looking through the medicine in the cabinet when he hears a bell ringing. He goes to the lobby to check it out, and it's the honeymoon suite bell. And then we get a good jump scare here where Fiona's kind of twisted and dead looking under the bell, pointing up at it. He then says he was thinking she was trying to tell him to go up there.
This was such a great jump scare because one second he's looking at the bell, the next it's just her standing right beneath it. She's trembling and she's pointing up at the bell. And given what you know by the end of the movie, this is also instantly tragic. And when we cut back to Jerry, he is holding the same pose that she was as he explains it all to Ohm, and it's so good.
It is good. And even in this moment, I was like, oh, I hope Fiona's still up there, but still alive, but we find out not the case. Jerry says he's going to wait until night and then go back up to the hotel to check the honeymoon suite. Ohm mentions it's locked, and then Jerry opens his coat and has the key, and he tells Ohm that he broke into Mr. Cobb's house and stole it. Ohm asks Jerry to give him the key so he can check, but Jerry tells him he won't be able to get close to the hotel with Fergal there. He then asks Ohm to come with him to check the hotel with him at night because he's afraid of what he's going to find up there. It then cuts to Ohm and Jerry waiting in the dark while Ohm's flipping through the Irish folklore book. Jerry says that all the things in those books do exist, it's just people with closed minds can't see them.
I noticed that when Jerry says this, you can hear another fox cry in the distance, and I started listening for these because I think they're kind of like punctuation marks at this point.
Yeah, you're right. I did hear them throughout this movie, and this is so funny. I was actually with a group of friends hanging out in rural Pennsylvania recently, and one of them was like, we heard this crazy noise in the wood, and they were like, have you ever heard? And I was like, a fox? Are you going to say a fox cry? And they were like, yeah, you know what that sounds like? And I was like, yeah. And I got really excited. And then I was like, yeah, I think I've heard it before in a movie.
Oh, you didn't immediately try to evangelize them to become Damien McCarthy stans?
No, I didn't. This is the same group of people that I asked if they had read a specific book, and they were like, "Oh, we don't read books." So I didn't think they would appreciate the podcast. I know. Anyway, Ohm asked Jerry if Jerry was drinking his magic milk when he saw Fiona's ghost, and Jerry says that's how he saw her because his mind was open the whole time. He then tells a story about how his wife's spirit once visited him on a trip and thanked him for ending her suffering and that they'd be together again someday. Ohm tells him to believe whatever he wants and kind of brushes him off. And then it's kind of sad because Jerry says again here, he says, she said we'd be back together someday. They bicker a bit about it, and then they hear the last car leave for the night and they go back up to the hotel.
And while they're moving through the woods toward the hotel, there's yet another fox cry, but also the music that's here is super eerie. And there's wind and groaning and even a pounding noise. The tension is definitely building.
Yes, for sure. And we're excited that maybe we get to see a witch soon. So when they go inside, Jerry immediately goes into the back room to grab the crossbow. And as he's getting it, Fergal sneaks up from behind him and puts him in a chokehold until he passes out. He then zip ties him up and throws him into the van to take Jerry to the police while Ohm watches from the shadows. Ohm is now in the hotel alone when he hears the honeymoon suite bell ring. He looks in his hand and he has the key somehow. He goes upstairs alone, and while he's in the elevator, he drinks some liquor from his flask.
And I think this is the first time we see him drink from that flask since he got back from the hospital. Unless he might have taken a sip while he was sitting there with Jerry. This is either the first or second time we see him drink from it. And then, did you notice that the up and down arrows for the honeymoon suite are shaped like hearts?
I did, yeah, just the key's shaped like a heart too.
It's cute.
Yeah, it is cute. It would have been cute before. It is what it is now. So as soon as Ohm gets upstairs, it's immediately creepy because a side door starts to slowly open, and he goes to check out the suite, and while he's looking at it, this little clock with a figure of a little boy standing on top of it holding what looks like a golf club or some kind of club dings, and the figure turns and it hits a bell on top of the clock. Then goes into the bedroom of the honeymoon suite, and there's this creepy bed surrounded in white linen and a bathtub that seems to be full of like old moldy bacteria water. And then decides to pull back the curtains surrounding the bed, and there's nothing there. And he sits on it, drinks a little bit more of his whiskey, and then falls asleep. And I'm sorry, but I don't care how drunk or stoned or anything else I am, I simply would not even touch that bed, let alone sit on it, let alone fall asleep on it. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. Like, at a minimum, you're catching hantavirus from that bed or like some sort of, heretofore unknown airborne botulism just from the hot tub crime machine that's in the bathroom.
For real. Or no, honestly, you would catch my worst fear of bed bugs. Just like we almost caught in Philly that one time we went there.
That was a nightmare.
Oh, man. It was a nightmare. Listeners, Eleanor and I went to Philly to go see My Chemical Romance, which was incredible. I have to give Eleanor all the props for buying us our tickets and making that happen. But she also booked the Verbo from Hell. And no, it was actually a really cute Verbo, but we get in it after spending all night at this concert, and I lay down on the bed, and I'm also, 6 months pregnant at this point or something, and I'm just like trying to decompress on this bed, and I look down, and I see this bug go across the bed, and I was like, no. It cannot be. And I was like, people are going to think I'm crazy. So I took my phone out and I snapped a bunch of pictures and videos of it. And then I went upstairs to go get Eleanor, and her husband was in the other room. And I just looked at him and I was like, come here right now. And he was like, okay. And he comes in the room and I was like, look at it. Look at that bug. Is that a bed bug? And he was like, no. He was like, I don't think so. Go to bed. And I was like, no, go get your wife. Go get her right now. I was like, I need someone to take me seriously.
And at some point, you guys sent my teenager to come find me. And so he walks into the room upstairs and he's like, Charlie needs you. I'm like, okay. He's like, right now. I'm like, oh. And I'm like, oh my God, her water broke. It's go time. What's happening? So I race downstairs and I come into your room and you and my husband are standing there staring at me. And I thought you had, for some reason, I was tired. I was, just my brain wasn't functioning correctly because of all the delicious Gerard Way I just consumed. I thought you were holding a knife. And my first thought was, they found a murder weapon in this room. I don't know why. You weren't holding a knife. I don't remember what you were holding. But then you showed me what you saw. And then we're like frantically looking up photos of what these things look like. We're like, nope, yep, that's definitely it. We can't get a hold of the host. So we go and check all the other beds first. Well, first we pulled all of your belongings out of that room. And then we went and checked the other beds. None of them seemed to be impacted. And this room was completely separate from everything else. And then we packed up all of my kids and left.
Yes, and spent way too much money at another hotel, but it was a nice hotel and got 3 hours of sleep.
It was a nightmare. And I couldn't,
What a night.
while you guys were packing everything, I took my teenager with me to try to find my car, and then I couldn't find my car. And I was in my pajamas and my hair looked insane. And we clearly are not from there because we're wandering around. I think it was 2:30 or something. And this SUV drove by us once and then came back and slammed on brakes and glared at us. And at first I was a little uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, no. They're afraid of me. I look insane.
They think you're breaking into cars at 2 a.m.
They probably, well, I was going up one street, stopping, swearing at my phone, turning around. I think they thought I was on drugs.
Oh,
and
gosh.
if they had stopped and mess with me, I would have been like, bed bugs or something. I think they would have left us alone. And what makes this even more fun was this was after we took that questionable Uber home.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell that story too.
We should save it for another day.
Oh, that Uber story is fantastic. Anyway.
But yes, we definitely wouldn't be sleeping on that bed.
No, I would never sleep on that bed. Ohm does decide to sleep on that bed, and as he's sleeping on it, he seems to have a dream, and the dream is of a little boy sitting in front of a static TV playing with a gun. And the boy turns the gun to the side, and it accidentally goes off. Off screen, you hear someone drop a bunch of groceries, and then you see milk and oranges roll across the floor, and then a woman slowly walks towards the little boy, drops to her knees, and hugs him while he stares ahead at the TV with what appears to be that weird donkey character we talked about earlier playing on it. And this scene, the exact opposite of the bedbug story, this scene broke my fucking heart. Like, I put myself in the mom's shoes at that moment, and the last thing this mom does while she is dying is her number one priority is to go comfort her child. And like, I just feel like she did it in a way where she was probably trying to tell him like she loves him and she doesn't want him to blame himself before she died. And it just like, I wanted to sob. It's so sad.
I know. I wasn't ready for it. It's very gut-wrenching. And then also suddenly all of his anger and his self-loathing kind of makes sense. Not that that's an excuse for bad behavior, but you do start to understand what's going on with him.
Yeah, and the fact that after this his dad blames him and like can't get past him, and I assume abuses him and all of that. Ugh, it's just awful. So we are, however, quickly brought out of those feels when we get a jump scare of Jack the Jackass Donkey Man hovering above Ohm.
It is a terrifying jump scare. This is a very deeply unsettling creature. I remember the first time I saw, because I did see part of this trailer, and I thought this was going to be the witch. And I was like, what is happening here? I need to see this movie, and I refuse to watch more of this trailer. But yeah, I know a lot of people have been like, oh, that's the bunny. It's not a bunny. It's Jack the Jackass.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the witch too, based off the trailer. And it's funny because you know this jump scare is coming because it's in the trailer, and it still got me, even with that. So it's a good one. Jack the Jackass grabs Ohm, and then all of a sudden, it's actually Mal who has come upstairs to investigate why the honeymoon suite was unlocked. He asks Ohm how he got up there and how he got the key, and Ohm tells him that Jerry stole it because he was convinced Fiona was up in this room. And Ohm agreed to come up here with Jerry because he wanted to help Fiona because she had saved him. Ohm agrees to go back downstairs with Mal, but while he's walking towards the elevator, he sees what appears to be like a hidden door of some kind in the wall that's slightly open. Mal freaks out and tells Ohm he needs to stop and he can't be up here. Ohm looks into it, and it's this huge tunnel thing that leads down. And he asks Mal where it goes, and he tells him it goes down to the basement that was there before the remodeling that happened with this building that turned it into a hotel. He says the entrance got lost during the renovations and there's nothing down there now. Mal then closes the door and Ohm notices a button next to it. He goes to click it and Mal grabs his hand and says there's nothing down there. Ohm then gives Mal this look and clicks the button, and Mal starts to completely freak out and says, no, okay, we need to move now. We need to leave now.
This exchange is so funny because Ohm does like this fake out thing, and then, like you said, does that look and like rushes back to click the button really quick. It's his assholeness, but for once it's, kind of for a good cause. But I will say, it did make me wonder how many like historic hotel staff people in Ireland have to deal with American assholes claiming that they found a secret passage or I don't know. I start to feel for those folks because they've had to deal with it before.
I fear I would be one of those American assholes. Like, I'm not going to ignore a secret tunnel behind a portrait.
No, if it's real.
In a castle.
No, if it's real, I'm with you. You and I are getting kicked out for being American assholes, but I just wonder about I just wonder about like the people who are making stuff up or whatever.
That's true. I mean, half the time it's probably just like a passageway that leads to the kitchen or something. But still, like, I'm going to go down it. So Ohm refuses to leave and he watches as Fiona's dead body wearing a bunny costume rises out of the basement. Mal immediately runs to the elevator and locks Ohm upstairs with the dead Fiona.
What did you think was happening here? Like, did you think you were going to find Fiona? You were going to see Fiona? Because the way this had gone so far, I thought Mal was just terrified of the Kalyak.
No, so the impression I was getting was that I did think Fiona was down there or that they had sent Fiona down there. But at this point in the movie, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this hotel has some like weird ritual thing where they sacrifice a person down to the Kaliak once every Halloween, and it was Fiona's ear or something like that. Yeah, that was my train of thought. I wasn't sure what would come up, but I thought he knew. Ohm tries to get out, and he realizes he's now stuck up in the honeymoon suite as he watches Mal get in his car and drive away. He walks back towards Fiona, and he starts to hear his voice saying the idea for a character line that he said to Albie the night that he tried to hang himself. There's a flashback to Fiona sitting at the front desk of the hotel playing with one of those little figures from the witch story. She's sitting there in her bunny costume next to Mal, and Mal notices that she still has Ohm's recorder and asks her why. She puts it in her pocket, and Mal tells her to drink her tea while it's still hot. It then cuts to her behind the desk, and the cup of tea's empty, but she seems like super dizzy and out of it, and then she passes out. Mal catches her and puts her in a wheelchair and then quickly wheels her over to the honeymoon suite elevator, and we see Mal try to put her in the dumbwaiter and then send her down into the basement.
Do you think he believes in the Kaliak? Like, did he think Fiona would get taken by her? Or did he just hope to starve her?
I think he just wanted to starve her and kill her, and it's awful and cowardly and gross.
Yeah. Either way, cowardly little Manine.
Yeah, for real. Can't even do the dirty work himself. So then it cuts back to a dead Fiona in the dumbwaiter, and Ohm looks down to see his recorder by her hand. He grabs it and plays it, and it's a recording of Fiona saying she knows she's going to be okay, but she's going to leave this message just in case. She says her name and says thinks she's in the basement of the hotel. She then says she's pregnant and Mal's the father, and he's mad at her for keeping the baby. She wasn't going to tell anyone it was his, but he was so afraid of his wife and Mr. Cobb finding out.
We should note, too, she's been missing for weeks, as they told us earlier, but she doesn't look like she's been dead for that long. She's clearly been dead for some time, but I don't think weeks. Her eyes are still open and they're cloudy, but they still look like eyes. And we saw this in Caveat, too, and it makes me wonder if the director is trying to show that the bodies can't rest until the souls have gotten some sort of justice.
That's a good way to think about it. I mean, You're definitely right. Like, I don't think she is as decomposed as she would be unless, I mean, the basement's probably cool. Maybe that made something happen. I don't know. I was glad she was a little less purple than the mom in Caveat, though. While Ohm's listening to his recorder, he finds a little trap door under the desk in the room, but it's locked and he can't open it. He is able to find a butter knife, and he tries to remove the screws from the little door, but the one's stripped.
This is the opposite of the movie Caveat, where there are tons of tools conveniently laid out for everyone to find and use at the most opportune times.
Yes, far less tools in this one. While he's doing this, it cuts to a scene of Jerry waking up in the back of Fergal's van. He manages to cut his zip ties with a knife that he has on him, and then he opens the back door of the van, and we see him looking at the road, and the van's driving pretty fast, and he pauses a second, and then he does decide to jump out of the van while it's moving, and it's like, Jerry, just wait for the van to slow down or stop. Like, it's got to take a turn at some point, right?
The fairies must have been calling.
I suppose. Back in the room, Ohm abandons the trapdoor, and he notices the little clock figure chiming 3 times. He turns and looks, and Fiona's body is no longer in the dumbwaiter. He slowly walks to the creepy bed and hears wailing coming from over the intercom. And as he's walking from one room into the next, we get this really good jump scare of his mom walking very close behind him. It startles him, and he turns around, and then all of the lights turn off.
Yeah, it's such a good one because you're watching him move from one room to the other, and when you lose sight of him behind like the frame of the wall, and then when he reappears, suddenly he's not alone anymore. His mother is stalking right behind him, and it was so creepy. And then you can also hear in the dark, you can hear this whispering, and I don't know if it's supposed to be his mother trying to communicate with him or if it's the Kaliak. And then I have to point out, once again, we see Damian McCarthy's use of an intercom for some extra creepy shit.
If Damian McCarthy ever comes out with another movie, we should make a bingo card.
We'll win in like the first 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Oh,
yes.
but we should. Oh my God. We have to.
We will. So Ohm grabs his lantern and he hears someone knocking on the door. He asks who's there, but all of a sudden an old TV turns on and then off again.
And so he's in the dark with his lamp and there's spooky shit happening. Would you say he's as vulnerable as lamplit game?
I suppose I would. And while he's looking at the TV, he sees a reflection in it of what appears to be Fiona. You see the bunny ears standing off in the corner of the room.
Have you seen Donnie Darko?
I fucking love Donnie Darko. It's one of my OG, like, oh, I love that movie. It's so good.
It kind of looks like the bunny from Donnie Darko. And when I first saw that thing creeped me out a lot. Like, for years after I saw that movie, if I woke up in the middle of the night and it was dark, I would hear that bunny going, "Wake up," and I would not sleep.
Well, that's so funny. I have the opposite experience of Donnie Darko. This is probably my origin story of why I'm who I am today. That bunny comforted me. I love that bunny, and I would fall asleep listening to the song Mad World from Donnie Darko over and over and over and over, and just like, I don't know, I would visualize that movie and that bunny, and I did it so often that it became calming for me and would help me fall asleep.
It's your cursed lullaby.
It is. It's so good. I don't know. Anyway, back to Ohm. He turns around and there's no one there, but you can still see them on the TV. He looks closer at the TV and then it turns on again and we get a jump scare of the demon donkey from earlier. The donkey, who we have said is named Jack, begins to read a letter from Ohm. It says, quote, "My name is Ohm and I'm 10 years old. My mom died last year. I was playing with my dad's gun when it went off. My dad hates me now. I miss my mom. I'm scared all the time. Can you help me?" End quote. The donkey then throws the letter and says, "Well, Ohm, it's pretty simple. Your dad told you not to go near his gun, but you did anyway, and his wife got her brains blown out. There's no help, and you should be scared. You should be fucking scared." And then the TV turns off.
It's just his guilt manifesting in these horrific ways. And also in this scene, we see some shots of carvings of these cherubs that are all over the walls, and we get some close-ups of them. And they're doing that see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil thing, just like in Caveat.
Love the little cherubs. They're so good. So it cuts to Ohm sitting at a little table in the corner of the room, looking around and drinking more of his whiskey. He looks at a sand dial on the table and he sees his two characters from his novel in the sand, and he's startled by the little golf demon clock again.
I want one of those clocks.
I don't, and it reminds me so much of my grandmother's house. I don't know. I want an evil demon bunny, but not a cherub clock. I don't know. He looks back in the sand, and this time there's nothing there. He notices a map of the fire escape routes on the wall, and he looks at it. All of a sudden, the recorder starts to play again, and it's Fiona's voice saying that there's no way back up and that the button in the basement's broken and she can't find a way out. He looks up at the clock again, and he takes a bell off of it, but the little guy still swings his club. He moves the clock in front of the dumbwaiter button, and it hits it, sending the dumbwaiter back down. He calls it back up, and then he stares at Fiona for a second, knowing he's going to have to move her to go down there. He psychs himself up, and then he pulls her out of the dumbwaiter and sets her on a chair and heads down to the basement. And I don't know if this is stupid or brave of him, but knowing that someone just died down there and was stuck down there for weeks, and there's a chance that that little clock might not work and he might not get out, it's a pretty wild decision he's making, and he is putting a lot of trust into that clock.
Yeah, there's a bit of male arrogance there too, right? Like, well, if Fiona was trapped down there for weeks and couldn't find a way out, certainly I can. But it is a clever way to set up the clock so that it will pull the dumbwaiter back up if that bottom button is broken.
I agree with that. I just think maybe I would have explored, breaking a window first.
Oh, yes. There would be a lot more violence in that room before I did what he did.
Agreed. So he goes down into the basement, and when he gets down there, he sees a long, dark stone hallway. He finds the light switch on the wall and he turns it on. All the lights turn on except one that keeps flickering. In this hallway, he sees a bunch of trinkets hanging from the ceiling, including Albie's lighter and a little figure that Fiona was playing with the night on Halloween. He goes farther down the hall until he runs into a dead end. He then goes back and drinks some whiskey while he waits for the dumbwaiter to go back up.
That is such a good catch about the lighter. I did not realize that was Albie's lighter, but that makes so much sense. Also, the dead end, if you look, it's newer cinder block. You can tell it's like newer construction. So this is that sealed up exit that Mal was talking about. So that's how he knew Fiona wouldn't get out.
And we're about to get to it, but Could you tell, is this the same wall that then later turns into a doorway with chalk, or is that a different
It's a
wall?
different one, and we will talk about it.
Okay, all right. So while he's waiting, his recorder starts to play, and it's Fiona sounding panicked. And she's saying she thinks there's someone down there with her, and she keeps hearing something.
This is also where he finishes the last of his flask. It's all gone now.
Oh, right. Yes. Then you start to hear wailing that we've heard throughout the movie, and Fiona starts to sob. Ohm then hears something down the hallway and gets creeped out. He looks at the wall behind him, and there's chalk marks all over it, like someone's tried to draw some kind of ritualistic doorway. And on the floor is a piece of chalk. He grabs the chalk, and then the alarm goes off that it's time for him to get into the dumbwaiter. He runs back to it and jumps in, but it doesn't go up when it's supposed to. Suddenly, he looks down the hall, and the lights go out, and there's that wailing noise.
Yeah, and if you notice here, this wall is the different one. It's not the cinder block one. And if you look at the wall where the ritualistic doorway was drawn in chalk, it is transformed, and it's now 2 swinging doors with circular windows. And even though the lights have all gone off down in this basement, you can see light glowing through these 2 windows. So the portal has been opened.
Oh, okay. It's funny too because don't those 2 swinging doors to you kind of look like service doors into like a kitchen or something?
They do. And I don't want to ruin the whimsy, but this portion was filmed in the basement of a castle in Ireland.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Huh. Okay. From here, we get this really tense scene where you can hear chains coming down the hallway and cackling, and it keeps cutting to the little sheriff boy on the clock upstairs, and his face almost looks amused and evil at the same time, like it's toying with Ohm. And just as Ohm sees the witch emerge from the shadows, the dumbwaiter starts to go back up.
I have a personal theory that Damien McCarthy got the idea for this malfunctioning, slightly trollish clock from the fact that the bunny and caveat would just refuse to work sometimes when they were rolling.
That's so funny. Probably, and he probably had to stare at its like beady little eyes while it refused to work for him, and he got so frustrated.
The amount of curse words that were levied at that bunny has probably never happened before, nor will it since.
That's funny. I subscribe to this belief. So the dumbwaiter gets back to the top, and Ohm takes a second to sit in it, and then the clock turns again, and the dumbwaiter starts to go back down. At the last second, Ohm's able to jump out, and then he looks down into the hole that leads into the basement. And while he's looking down it, there's this really creepy shot of the witch climbing up the side of the wall, kind of like Spider-Man.
Words can't really do it justice right now. This is a very creepy shot, but also I think this kind of shot will always get me. Like somebody staring into the dark, and then suddenly there's something scurrying towards you.
Yeah, it's the scurrying or like the climbing that gets me, like when something looks like a bug or something, kind of like the way the kids scurry in the movie Us. It's just that like creepy little
Oh,
scurry.
yeah.
So Ohm slams the door shut, but the witch opens it back up, and he tries to go into the bathroom side of the honeymoon suite through the bathroom window, but he falls into the sludge-filled tub while the witch is cackling at him.
I love that the witch laughed at him here.
Yes, she laughs at him a lot. So he locks the door, and the witch does this thing where she jumps up over the door, and we see her face in the window above the door. And then suddenly she appears coming through the bathroom the same way that Ohm did.
So this part where you see her start to come through the door, when I saw this in theater, the person in front of me right at this moment dropped their backpack loudly, and their phone also fell. So while the witch is reaching towards us on the screen, I also, in my real life, saw a massive black shape with a blue glow launch toward me. And I jumped so hard that I think I accidentally conducted several minutes of Kegels.
Oh my gosh, your adrenaline must have been through the roof the whole rest of that
I
movie.
was out of my seat.
Oh my God. Did the person apologize?
No, I don't. They didn't notice. The people next to me did, but not the person in front of me.
Oh, that's funny. So at this point, Ohm takes out his chalk and he draws a circle around the bed. And I swear he does it as slow as he possibly can. Well, the witch starts to stick her hand through a broken piece of window in the bathroom and then unlocks a bathroom door. And this bothered me a little bit. I feel like I would have very quickly just drawn a little circle around me, not like around the entire bed while the witch is right there. Instead, he chooses to like go back to the virus bed. It makes no sense.
I think he wanted to hide from her behind the curtains, and also if he's drunk and he knows he's about to pass out, might as well make a big circle.
I guess he got a bed to hide in, but still, I don't know. He finishes the circle and then he hops into bed, and then the witch slowly circles the bed while watches, and I think the scene is really well done. I think they did a good job here of revealing enough of the witch that like you get an idea of what she looks like, but she's still hiding in behind the sheet, so your mind makes it even creepier than it is, and it's just really good. And then also, did you notice that at one point in this scene it gives you a top view of Ohm inside the bed, so you can see both the bed and outside of it, and there's no witch there.
I saw the overhead shot, but I thought she was just out of view. So I wasn't sure. Also, the muttering that she's doing is in Irish, and she is mocking him, and she's basically saying, "Why are you drawing that circle?" Like she's just making fun of him.
I didn't know that she's actually saying stuff. Do you know the scene in Caveat where the picture falls and it's just like whispering coming from the picture, but it's just muttered nothings?
Yes. Oh, yes. That frustrated us deeply.
Yes. So I just assumed everything the witch was saying meant nothing at all. So that's cool that it actually means something.
Yeah, I'll mention this again later, but I didn't get all this from, consulting our on-staff Irish speaker, but there's an interview with Damien McCarthy where he says what the witch is saying when she's talking. So that's, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So I got this nugget for you and another one a little bit later. But yeah, she is basically making fun of him for drawing the circle. And between that and her laughing at him for falling in the hot tub crime machine, I don't know. It's hard to hate her.
Oh, no, I don't hate her at all. It then cuts to outside the hotel and it's morning. Mal pulls up in a car and he notices another car parked and there's like this really bloody handprint on it. He runs inside and he sees more blood splattered on the front desk. He hears a noise and he finds Jerry desperately trying to open the gate to get into the honeymoon suite. He looks awful. His one arm's clearly sustained a ton of injury. He can't move it on at all. And this is obviously from when he jumped out of the van. Jerry asks Mal for help, and Mal asks what happened, and Jerry says, Fergal, it doesn't matter. And he says he needs to get up the elevator because Ohm went up there. And Jerry is just so stinking sweet and pure. I just love him so much. Like the way he is sacrificing his entire body to save a stranger and Fiona is just, it's so cute.
He is really amazing. And I would watch more not only of his character, but I like this actor too. I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's true. I would like to watch more as well. So Mal tells Jerry that Ohm's gone. Mr. Cobb sent him here to look for the key, and when he got there, the gate was unlocked, so he went up and found Ohm upstairs and drunk. He says he was too drunk to drive, so Mal took him into town and got a taxi for him to go to the airport. Then Jerry asks about Fiona, and Mal says she wasn't there. Upstairs, Ohm wakes up in bed, and he peers out of the curtain and the witch appears to be gone. He slowly steps out of the chalk circle and nothing happens. He looks in the other half of the honeymoon suite and there's no sign of the witch. Then he looks out and he sees the cars out there. And it makes me so mad that he doesn't even attempt to break the window in this scene. Like, just break the window so he can hear you scream. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it is boarded up a little bit, but I feel we don't watch him make any like real attempts to get through it.
No, it's boarded up, but you could still get there's enough metal in that room or wood that you could smash that window out. At least, maybe not to fit through yourself, but to scream. So, anyways, back downstairs, Jerry asks Mal if he's sure he checked the honeymoon suite and that Fiona isn't there. Jerry says he just needs to check it for himself. Mal says he's gonna have to call the police and that they know about Jerry's wife. Jerry says he saw Fiona and Mal says to just go. He tells him to take Ohm's car and don't come back, and Mal won't tell the police.
And I mean, he should be suspicious, right? Because he's suddenly trying to help him.
Right. Yeah. Oh, there's all kinds of reasons. Mal is not a good liar. So upstairs, Ohm looks down the dumbwaiter tunnel again and he shuts the door. He has a flashback to Jerry pointing to the honeymoon suite bell, and he starts to look for the call bell in the room. He finds it and starts ringing the bell. It startles Mal, but Jerry has already left the building and is limping towards the car. Mal watches tensely to make sure Jerry doesn't hear the bell and drives away. Ohm notices Jerry get in the car and starts to scream for him, but he can't hear him. Right before it appears that Jerry is going to drive away, he gets out of the car and heads back into the hotel. Ohm runs and starts ringing the bell again, but right when Jerry opens opens the hotel door, the cord to the call bell breaks and it stops ringing. Jerry then says he left the keys to the car on the desk. Mal looks absolutely terrified, and Jerry asks him if he's all right, and Mal says no, he's actually not feeling his best, and he's gonna lock up and go home. Mal grabs the key for Jerry while Ohm kicks in the wall by the call bell and reaches and tries to find a cord to pull.
More of this classic Damian McCarthy sticking a hand in a dark hole thing.
It's true. At the very least, he could get tetanus. Anyway, he does find a cord to the call bell and he pulls it again. And this time we see Jerry driving away. So he pulled it too late. Mal sits at the front desk and stares at a picture of his family with his father-in-law, Mr. Cobb. He comes back out to the lobby and this time Jerry's standing there.
And here the music, the Oft in the Stilly Night, starts playing.
Oh. I see. So he says that Fiona used to say to never ignore when something feels off, and he thinks something feels off here. He then asks if he dropped Ohm off in town, why did he come back to the hotel? Mal says he was getting a picture reframed for his wife. Jerry isn't buying it, and then the honeymoon suite bell starts to ring again. Jerry grabs it, axe and threatens Mal and tells him to give him the key. Jerry starts to go towards the elevator. Mal pleads with Jerry, telling him it was all a mistake and that Jerry doesn't know Fiona like he did and that she wasn't a good person.
Classic Menine behavior. Act like you're the hero. Oh, can a man do something nice for his wife? And then when that doesn't work and your lie is found out, immediately disparage the person that you victimize.
Right? Like you get caught and your go-to is, well, she's a terrible person. So it doesn't matter what I did with her. Fuck you, buddy. Fuck you. He says Fiona was threatening to tell Mr. Cobb, and Mr. Cobb had threatened to kill Mal for much less over the years and tells him to leave home because he was going to kill himself anyway. Jerry ignores him and opens the elevator gate and goes up. And he flips Mal off as he does so. Mal then goes and puts a bunch of clothes and blankets over a space heater and turns it up to high.
In the theater where I saw this, I was sitting next to, I was with my husband on one side and then this older woman that I didn't know. And you describe her as maybe like a church lady or a librarian. And at this part where Mal is clearly trying to start a fire, she went, "This motherfucker."
I agree with you, lady. That motherfucker.
It was good.
It's so good. Jerry makes it upstairs and he calls for Ohm. Jerry tells Ohm he's going to open the small door that Ohm was trying to open earlier. He knocks the lock off and he opens it up. He asks where Fiona is and Ohm tells him she's dead because Mal killed her. Ohm asks Jerry if he's okay and he says, "I'll live." And right as he says that, Mal appears in the elevator behind him and he shoots him in the head with a crossbow. And damn you, Damian McCarthy. I don't know if I can forgive him for this one. Like, how dare he try to make such a sad moment into a funny one?
It's good, right? Like, I don't want to forgive him for letting Jerry die, but it was good. A couple of other neat things here. One is that the whole time Jerry is trying to save Ohm, that song that I mentioned earlier has been playing. And the second that crossbow enters his head, it stops and goes totally silent. And then also, what made this scene a lot less sad for me personally is that same librarian woman I mentioned earlier. Right when Mal shot Jerry, she went, "This motherfucker," even more indignant. And I was so happy I sat next to her.
I needed that lady with me because I was so sad in this moment when the music stops playing and like all hope's lost. It's so sad.
Is.
But I will, if I ever watch it again, picture that lady to help me get through. So Jerry falls over dead and Ohm runs away while Mal reloads. And it's funny because this crossbow is so tiny compared to the one in Caveat. Like it's basically like a pencil toy crossbow in comparison.
It's more mobile.
It is. He tells Ohm not to try and leave, and then he goes back down the elevator. As he does this, the space heater catches fire. But then when Mal gets back downstairs, he realizes that the gate's somehow locked, and he doesn't have the key. He tries to open the gate without the key, but he can't. And did you think this was weird? Do you think that gate locks automatically or not? Because it couldn't have been Jerry that locked it because he had the key with him. So what locked the gate?
Yuck.
Yeah. So upstairs, Ohm checks on Jerry and he finds the key and takes it. And right then, Mal comes back up and Ohm runs away before he can see him. As Mal is searching Jerry for the key, the fire alarm starts to go off. And Mal realizes Ohm has the key and he goes into the honeymoon suite. When he gets in, he sees that Ohm's going down the dumbwaiter. And Mal calls over the intercom for him and tells him that the hotel's on fire and there's no way to get out down there.
This part reminded me a lot of Caveat too, because you've got the villain trying to convince the protagonist to just comply with whatever he's trying to get him to do. Everything's hopeless. You should just do whatever I'm saying. But they're also doing it over an intercom because they're cowardly.
Yes, they're cowardly, awful people. Damien McCarthy definitely knows how to make a villain. They're way too real. Okay, Mal says he'll bring Ohm back up with the key and then they can both just leave and go home. And Ohm starts to walk down the hallway in the basement and he hears the wailing from the witch.
I think you can also hear the voice of his mother calling for him there.
Oh, you probably can. I didn't notice it. I'll have to go back and listen. So downstairs, Ohm starts to draw a chalk circle, but at the very last second, the witch is there and we hear a shackling noise. Then Mal comes downstairs in the dumbwaiter a moment later looking for Ohm. When Mal gets to the hanging trinkets, he sees the honeymoon suite keys and he tries to tear them down. While he's untangling them, we get another jump scare from the witch and she shackles Mal up and grabs his lantern and then walks away laughing. She walks past Ohm, who's sitting there looking defeated and scared, and I think he's crying.
He is crying. And when she passes him, this is another thing I learned from that interview I mentioned earlier. She whispers to him in Irish to say, "He is waiting for you." So kind of like implying the devil. And then also at some point down here, she says to Mal that she knows he is the father. So, she spoke to Fiona or something.
Yeah, either she spoke to Fiona or she heard Fiona talking to herself over the recorder, or maybe she just knows. That's interesting. Wow, he's waiting for you, so she is taking him to something. That's crazy. Okay, so the music gets sadder and we see Ohm's mom come to try to comfort him. And this time, I don't know if you noticed, but throughout the movie, so the first time we see her, she looks really dead and really pissed. And as the movie goes on, you can see the bullet hole, but she looks a little less decayed. But this time, there's no bullet wound on her face. And Ohm's crying and he says it was an accident and that he's sorry. And she says, "I know, and you can't stay here." He grabs her hand, and again, he says it's an accident one more time, and then she disappears. And I started to cry just taking these notes again. It's so sad.
I know, it is. And it works as literal advice, but also spiritual advice, because she's saying he can't keep beating himself up. He can't sit in this half-done circle and wait for the Kalyak to get him. And he can't allow the darkness inside to win.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking that, but you're so right. Ugh, what a wonderful mom. So in this moment, Ohm realizes he has that knife thing that Fiona cut him down with from the ceiling in his pocket.
Once again, the key to his freedom from the hands of women. And he only realizes that he still has that because he had when he was speaking to his mom, he reached up to grab her hand, which was on his chest. And that's when he feels that he still has the knife in his pocket.
So sweet. Way to go, Mom. So Mal runs over and asks him what's happening right when the witch opens that door that we talked about earlier. And when she does, we see a bunch of these tortured souls screaming out, and Mal starts to get pulled into the room from his chain. And as Mal's getting pulled down the hallway, Ohm starts to cut through the chain in his shackles. He cuts himself free and then runs down the hall. And he also cuts the room key free from the ceiling and then goes back up the dumbwaiter. When he crawls out of the dumbwaiter, he sees Fiona, but this time her eyes are closed and she looks peacefully at rest. He goes down the elevator, but when the doors open, the entire hotel is in flames. He falls to the floor and unlocks the door, but after lifting it up and getting out, he seems to begin to pass out from the smoke inhalation, and it seems in this moment that all hope is lost. He lays there and closes his eyes, and we see Fergal screaming and looking for Mal, and we hear a woman's voice that I think's Fiona's voice calling for Fergal.
I thought it was his mom calling, but Fiona probably makes more sense. But either way,
they both make sense. I'll have to go back and look. It could be either one. So this leads Fergal to Ohm, who grabs him and drags him out, saving him. It then cuts to Ohm in the hospital yet again. He's on his laptop this time, and Albie comes to visit with a wrapped bottle of whiskey. He asks Ohm how he's feeling, and that reintroduces himself and says his name's Albie, and he didn't think that Ohm would have anyone visiting him because he's so far away from home. Ohm says he's pretty sure no one would visit him there either. He invites Albie in to sit down, and Ohm makes a joke saying he'll take 2 scoops of vanilla because Albie is in an ice cream man outfit.
Adam Scott is an amazing actor because he is still being a little bit of a dick But his demeanor and his tone have changed so much that he's a completely different person than we met earlier. And it's very subtle, but it absolutely gets across on screen.
It does. I really like him. And it's so funny because I thought I would have a hard time. And I kind of did. This whole movie, I'm like, it's Leslie Knope's boyfriend from Parks and Rec. But he does such a good job with this character that, and this movie's so well shot that I just love him. And he does really good in it. Albie tells him that he also works in the ice cream parlor next door as well, just, to make a buck here and there. He says that the bottle of whiskey that he brought is from Fergal and that Fergal's pretty devastated about Fiona. Ohm mentions that he spoke with Fergal and he asks Albie if he's been up to the hotel. Albie says they found the remains of Fiona and Jerry, and Mal's car was found outside, but they're still looking for him. Albie says he needs to tell Ohm he doesn't know what happened, but he's worried it may have been his fault in some way. He says there was a flask of whiskey in his room, and he asks if he drank any of it. Ohm says yes, and Albie asks how much of it. Ohm tells him, well, it's whiskey. I drank all of it. And Albie admits he spiked it with mushroom powder because Ohm was being such a dick to him.
Did you see that coming on your first watch?
I will say I questioned if the flask was spiked, but not because of Albie. I never would have guessed Albie. I was wondering if maybe like Jerry slipped something in there or if it got mixed up with something of Jerry's, but I was never like for sure.
Yeah.
But I did
No,
wonder.
same. I thought maybe when Jerry and Ohm were sitting in the dark waiting to go into the hotel after everyone left, maybe they had shared a drink and it just was, not on screen so that we could learn that later. But I never would have guessed Albie either.
No, never would have guessed Albie. So Ohm starts to doubt for a second what was real and what wasn't from his experience in the hotel, but he looks down at his wrists and he does see marks from the shackles there still. Then he hears Jerry's voice say, all these things do exist. It's just people with closed minds who can't see it. Albie apologizes and said that he did it because Ohm was really rude to him, and then he says he needs to leave. He then hands him the picture of his mom, saying that the firemen found it in the hotel. Ohm tells Albie to take the whiskey with him, and Albie says if he needed something to pass the time, he could bring Ohm his manuscript. Ohm then kind of laughs and he says, haven't I been through enough already, Albie? But in a cute, joking way. Albie nods his head and says he'll just do a quick polish of it tonight and he'll drop it off tomorrow. And Ohm says, all right. Ohm then puts a picture of his mom on the tray and opens his laptop back up. It's the epilogue of his book, and this time he begins to type, and it cuts back to the same desert scene we started with. But this time, the man is telling the little boy to turn away and is about to hit him in the head with a bottle, and then he stops and kneels down, and then he hands the bottle to the boy. He tells the boy to hit him in the head as hard as he can, and he tells him not to stop until it breaks. He then tells him to follow the map, and he can have it all. The boy grabs the bottle and he throws it away and the two hug. The camera pans out and we see that the bottle landed next to the skull of a ram or a goat with horns. Happy music is playing. End of movie.
Yes, and this happy music is I'm Going Home, and it's by the Cork Sacred Harp Singers. It is very upbeat and a perfect soundtrack for the way this movie ends.
Yeah, it's so nice that, even though Fiona does die, she made such an impact on Ohm that he makes, this nice ending to this story. I don't know, it's sweet. I like this ending. It was nice. Okay, so we dug into the plot. How about we dig a little bit deeper? What have you unearthed in this creepy and beautiful hotel in Ireland?
This was so much fun. I am going to talk about the Cailleach and magic. I'm going to talk about the director's perspective and inspiration. And finally, the story that Ohm wrote and then rewrote, and why that is a little bit more meaningful than it might have seemed. First, let's start with A Witch in the Circle. To learn a little bit more about what a Cailleach is, I read an article by Eleanor Hull, who was a writer and scholar of the Old Irish language. In 1927, she wrote for the peer-reviewed journal Folklore in an article called Legends and Traditions of the Cailleach Bira, or Old Woman Hag of Bira. And here she talked about a specific legend as well as some broader ideas about Cailleach. I should note here, I used the Internet Archive to access this article, and it is free to read, but you do have to have a login to view it. So if you don't have an Internet Archive account, you'll need to make one or, use a different way to access it. And then just a reminder, all the links that we post on the show notes on our website should never ever have a paywall. So if you ever run into that, please shoot us a note somehow and we'll check it out and see what's going on. So, Cailleach. This word Kaliak means one who wears a hood or a veil. It can apply to an old woman who wears a veil or specifically a nun. And this might be another example of an older tradition adapting to the new religion as it arrived in the region and became kind of the dominant practice.
Yeah, and I think so we get that one. I think the best view we get of this is when the Kaliak's walking away in the basement. Doesn't it? It kind of looks like she's wearing like a nun's habit almost.
Like the traditional, like white, close kind of fitting hood, and then they'll often have that black, larger hood on top. It does look
Yeah.
like that because it's a white cap or hood that's kind of close to the scalp. So yeah, it does kind of look like a nun's habit in that regard. Now, depending on the time and the region of the folklore that you're zooming in on, Kaliak can be associated with winter and wilderness and horn beasts or cattle. There are examples of ancient Gaelic goddesses later being represented as Christian nuns and Kaliaks. These were goddesses of war and builders of mountains and lakes and cairns, the famous stone mounds. But later they evolved into hags and banshees or Christian saints. And I think there's something very interesting to dig into there. How we have these powerful creator goddesses who morph over time into something to be feared, something ugly and old and profane. And what is being reflected here as far as the influence of the time? Is it the changing religion, the changing social norms? What was it about the world that these stories came from that caused these powerful mythic women to go from goddess to grotesque? I'm going to disappoint you all and say I don't know, and it's not the point of the movie, but I think it's worth looking into.
It's funny. I saw this interesting, I think it was a TikTok recently, and it was basically like my undoing was the realization that when men did magic, it was called miracles, but when women did it, they were called witches. And I just think this kind of fits here. That's something that, was powerful for women when they later, I think maybe it is a changing of societal norms or just this desire to control women.
And it feels very contrived, doesn't it?
It does. Yes, it definitely does.
Now, our Kaliak appears to have no motive that we know of, and maybe that's part of what makes her terrifying. Actually, Damien McCarthy said as much. He said that part of the appeal of doing a witch story is that their motives are kind of unknowable. But what I find interesting is that creatures from traditions like this probably did have very logical and relatable motives for the people that they came from. But part of this has been lost to time, either by actual suppression from like a colonizing force or simply the normal evolution of folklore as older traditions give way to new ones. And I still think that makes her terrifying.
I know. I do wish, I wish I knew what her motivation was because we really don't know. We see her feeding the souls of people to, the damned souls in the basement and whatnot, but we don't really know why. And I do wish I knew why. Even if it was for something as simple as power or eternal life or youth or something, but I guess we'll never know.
Until he makes more movies about this, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe.
One more quick note about this. There are places all over Ireland that have the name Kaliak. And in County Cork, where the director is from, there's a famous stone called the Hag of Bira. And that's supposedly the petrified head of the Kaliak. Okay, so what about this magic circle? The idea of a magic circle for protection is very old. I'm talking more than 5,000 years old. For example, the ancient Sumerians had a specific practice known as Sisuru. And this one used flour and an incantation to draw a magic circle to protect from evil, among other things. This whole using chalk and preventing a Kaliak from getting you, that's not an Irish or Gaelic tradition. It was invented for this film.
Dang, I was hoping you would tell me some secret because I always wondered why the mom in Caveat was drawing circles in that little black book. And I was like, maybe we'll figure it out, but I guess not.
If you look at Damien McCarthy's movies, you will see circles and portals a lot. It's not the opening shot, but it's one of the early shots in Caveat where you have the villain peering through that circular window at the protagonist. It's a very early shot. We didn't talk about it in our episode, but when you notice it, you notice he uses it everywhere in his movies. He uses circles a lot. And I think if you think about Ireland, you could think about fairy circles and then magic circles, even if it's not necessarily specifically an Irish or Gaelic tradition. The concept of magic circles have been with us for a very long time. And, I think he's just kind of playing around with that. And also the idea of portals.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially with the portal in the opening scene of Caveat too, because it goes from the hole in the mom's basement to the protagonist. So yeah, that makes sense. But okay, so if it wasn't a chalk circle that would have protected him from the Kaliak, what would have, or what does?
What I read, and this was mostly in that Eleanor whole article that I mentioned earlier, it comes down to being more clever than she is, and she is very clever. And she's very strong. And this is the sort of thing that we see in a lot of folklore, right? The clever hero outsmarts the evil but very competent witch or other monster. There are a lot of other examples in history and folklore and literature about the use of magic circles. We've mentioned in other episodes the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is a very old grimoire, and magic circles are documented there among other places.
That's interesting. I wonder too, because I'm trying to think with the Lesser Key of Solomon, like everything with like a pointed triangle was like more demon, while a circle was more protective. That's interesting. I will say it's so funny because I don't know why. Clearly, I have a small child because when you were saying the only way to defeat a witch is to outsmart them, the only thing I could think of was Rapunzel from Tangled and Mother Gothel.
Oh yeah, there are countless examples, and we do see them reflected in our modern day fairy tales as well. For magic circles, I think one of my favorite depictions of this it's a painting and it's by John William Waterhouse, and it's called The Magic Circle, and it features a woman at a cauldron drawing a circle in the ground with like a sword or a wand. And as you know, Charlie, this is one of the prints that I have hanging over my fireplace.
Oh, it's such a pretty one too. I love the vibe of all of the photos or the pictures, the paintings you have over your fireplace, and this fits beautifully.
It is beautiful. And so she's drawing her circle around this cauldron that is lit and something is burning and smoking in it, and there's some ravens and other creatures that are looking on, and it's just it's gorgeous.
It is, and she is wearing like just such a like cool flowy white gown with flowers and like a scarf around the middle. It's just I do love this picture in her. The vibes are incredible.
They are. Okay, so that's enough about the magic circle for now. Let's talk about what the director has said about this film. We've talked in other episodes, especially recently in our Us episode, about how creepy rabbits can be to some directors. We had a lot of fun talking about what Jordan Peele thinks of these and how they're creepy. We saw this in the movie Caveat, and now we saw it in Hokum. And Damian McCarthy clearly finds them very creepy as well. I watched a Fangoria interview with him where he talked not only about Jan Svankmeyer's version of Alice in Wonderland, which we discussed in Caveat, but also Donnie Darko and Watership Down. Now, I know you've seen Donnie Darko. Have you seen Watership Down?
I have not seen Watership Down from beginning to end, but I feel like it is a lot of people's childhood trauma that they watch Watership Down thinking it was a kid's movie to only be rudely, not awoken, but, rudely hit with the reality of what that movie actually
Traumatized.
is.
It did. The writer of that, it was a book first, and the author started it as stories that he would tell his kids when they were bored. And then it became an animated movie from, I think, the late 70s. And it is incredibly violent, and the imagery is really intense. So imagining baby Damian McCarthy watching this and eventually turning into the director that he is not difficult.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And you can definitely see the Donnie Darko influence in his work too. And it is, I will say the bunny in that movie is creepy. I am just weird. And I guess I don't know. I don't think bunnies are that creepy unless they are jackrabbits.
That's right. That's our official stance.
Yes, 100%. But I can absolutely see, and I think that he does a great job making them creepy.
Yeah. Now I think I mentioned earlier, I saw a lot of people online saying that they thought the Jack the Jackass character was also a bunny, but he's not. It's a donkey, and it was inspired in part by the 1940s Disney version of Pinocchio, which the director talks about in an interview that he did with In Review Online. Do you remember the scene in Pinocchio? They're on Pleasure Island, and the boys get turned into donkeys.
That scene is so fucked up. I do. Oh my gosh, I forgot about it. But as soon as you said Pinocchio, I gasped. I had my microphone muted, but I gasped because that makes perfect sense. I absolutely see how those donkeys influenced Jack the
Yeah.
Jackass.
So that's the scene because there's human qualities and donkey qualities in this kind of monstrosity. Do you remember how you felt when you saw that for the first time, the children turning into donkeys?
And, I mean, besides scared and uneasy, and there's something sinister going on in that scene, isn't there? I forget. I'd have to go back and watch it again, but there's something like inappropriate or weird happening.
The people who are turning the boys into donkeys are then enslaving them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, just hopeless and weird and scary and not for me.
Yeah, the whole, if I remember correctly, the whole shtick is that some villains lure young boys who just want to drink and smoke and play pool and do other things that were scary to adults in 1940. And, these adolescents and even really like middle school or younger kids end up going to this island because they hear it's fun. But actually what's happening is these people are the punch or beer that they're giving them is spiked with a potion that turns them into donkeys. And once they are turned into donkeys, they are sold.
Yes, yeah. I never really liked Pinocchio. I throw Pinocchio and Dumbo up there in the like disturbing, uneasy childhood movies for
They
sure.
are, for sure. And that's whether or not you got the racist version of Dumbo. So years ago, I watched this documentary about horror movies, and there is a part that talks about that scene in Pinocchio, and it said that kids who found that scene kind of fascinating grew up to love horror movies. And I cannot figure out the name of this documentary, where it came from, or if I hallucinated it. So listeners, if you can help me out and find this, or if you know what I'm talking about, shoot us a note. This was like 10 years ago or more. I can't remember the name of it or anything. I just remember this one little thing about it because my husband and I ended up talking about it for a while, like trying to remember how we felt as children seeing that scene and seeing if it was true that I found it fascinating as a child. Does that mean like you're more likely to grow up liking horror movies or whatever? So yeah, let me know if you can find it because I couldn't.
Did you find that scene fascinating as a child though?
Yes, disturbing, but fascinating.
I don't know if I found that scene fascinating, but I found other stuff fascinating. And I think I spoke about this a little bit, but I think Courage the Cowardly Dog was it for me. Maybe that's just because I'm a little younger. I don't know.
Maybe.
But the donkey scene wasn't for me. I do want to know about this documentary, though, so I will be seeing if I can find it because I want to watch it.
Yeah. Hopefully we can find it. Now, we've seen in both of the Damien McCarthy films that we've done so far that he really likes to highlight amidst the supernatural just how cowardly these violent villains are. And you kind of hinted at that earlier. And this is particularly true if they're inflicting violence against women. He said in a Time magazine interview, he said, quote, "I have no personal history with it, but there's always something about the kind of violence against women that's really affected me. It's just the most awful thing. So when I try to think of the worst character possible, it's always these cowardly, detestable men where there's nothing cool or slick about how villainous they are," end quote. He goes into some of this with his other interviews, and he's basically just like, these villains are stupid, they're not smart, they're not super geniuses, they're cowards, they're meanines, and they get what they deserve. And I love this. We see this with the cowardice in how Mal used Fiona and then just tried to get rid of her once she wasn't going to do what he wanted. And he was trying to do this in the most cowardly way possible.
Yes, I was saying I did say he does a great job of making a very realistic villain because most villains are just cowards like that and nothing they do is cool. They should not be worshipped or like badasses. They're not. They're just people who use other people and then discard of them in the most cowardly way possible. And like I said, like he couldn't even do it with his own hands. He had to let her like suffer in a basement and starve alone for days. Like it's awful. What a dick. I hate these guys.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Americans have a weird fascination and really a mythology around some of our most brutal serial killers, where we build them up to be like these super geniuses. They're stalking in the night and just so much more clever than everyone else. And it's not really what's happening. They're often in positions where they have access. That's a cruel word to use, but that's probably accurate. They have access to some of the most vulnerable people in our society, and they themselves are positioned in such a way that they're less likely to be viewed as suspect. And that's it.
Right. And not to mention, but most of these serial killers have gotten caught. So, like, were they smart or were they just lucky?
Yeah.
They're probably just lucky, and then their luck ended.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They're lucky, and the victims were not valued by the people who should have been there to protect them.
Exactly.
And I have a question for you. So once you realized that Ohm had been ingesting magic mushrooms, how much of this movie did you think was just a trip?
So I was all over the place with this one. I really tried to think about it, and his arms were shackled. So no matter what, he was shackled in that basement. Whether it was by Mal or the witch, he was shackled down there. And then Mal's missing. So I think the witch was real, and I do think Mal got taken by her. I think some of the things that were more his subconscious were his mom, or maybe like his mom when she came back more like evil, but I think she was actually there when she came back to comfort him. And then I think maybe that whole first trip we see where like he sees a donkey in the TV and the witch chasing him up in the room, I don't know, I think that might have been a trip, but that's just my wild guess. I have no rhyme or reason behind that, really.
Yeah, and it's hard to think back now and be like, oh, which particular scene might have just been a trip, especially since, like you said, Mal's missing, they didn't find the body, and the shackles were really around his wrists. So what happened? In that Time article that I mentioned, Damien McCarthy said that there is a trick to knowing what is real and what isn't. Do you have a guess? I never would have guessed.
No, the only thing I can think, like I said, like that one time that the witch was walking around the bed and I paused it and you couldn't see the witch when it panned out. That was the only time I got like maybe a real inclination. Because I would even say like reflections, but you're not even sure with the reflection on the TV. Is it there? Is it not? So no, I don't know. I don't know for sure.
So you're actually on the right track with reflections. In that article, he said a big tell is if you look in the reflection of Ohm's glasses and you can see what's actually in front of him. That's how you tell.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I certainly wouldn't have caught it. As intensely as I have been staring at all these scenes now that I'm trying to look for every detail, I certainly didn't catch that. So after reading this, I went back after several of my rewatches and I paused all the scenes basically from the time he entered the honeymoon suite to the end of the movie. And I paused it each time to try to see if I could tell which one was a trip and which one wasn't. So listeners, this is a fun game for you to play. Go back and do the same and see if you see something I didn't. I am sure I didn't catch everything. And some of it is, I think, probably up for debate. But here's what I saw. The lights going off in the room that first time, that looks real. But Fiona disappearing from the dumbwaiter and her reflection in the TV, I think that is part of the trip. I can't tell based on the glasses, like the reflection of the glasses, but because she is still in the dumbwaiter later and that vision happens right before the next thing I'm going to talk about, I think that's the shrooms.
I agree with that one. I think all the Fiona stuff's just shrooms because I don't think Fiona's ghost would ever come back to haunt him. I think if anything, she would try to help him. So I think that's the shrooms for sure.
Yeah. And then the next one is probably obvious, but Jack the Jackass on the TV, that is 100% part of the trip. If you look at the reflection on Ohm's glasses when he's watching this, you can see the TV. It's on, but it is just static. There's no characters on there.
I got that one.
Yeah. And then as for the Kalyak in the basement, I can't tell. I think that's left up to interpretation. I think at least part of it is real, and I think it's in keeping with what we have seen of Damien McCarthy's stories previously, where there is a supernatural element, and that supernatural element does come to exact justice on evil people. But at the end of the day, the biggest villain is in fact just a human. So I think some of it's left up for interpretation. So I would love it if the listeners told us what they think. Is it real? Was it a trip? Does the Kalyak still haunt the now charred ruins of the Bilberry Woods Hotel?
Ah, that's so interesting. My vote is yes, she's real. And here's why. Because Albie tells a story about her and he's not tripping then. And Mal sees the trinkets. It's the trinkets. I'm going to go back and look and see if Ohm can see the trinkets in his glasses. Because I think if he can see the trinkets, then the Kalyak is real.
That's a good point. I don't know if I could tell when I was rewatching it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to go back. I'll have to see. But I'm going to vote real. That's my final vote.
And Albie had the story like you said, and and Fiona believed him. So, yeah. And Mr. Cobb, who has been there much longer, you presume, he locked up the whole honeymoon suite because he believed it so much.
Right. He had to be afraid of something up there, right? To go through all that effort. So, yeah, I think she's real. I do. I think she got Mal.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the original ending of the Conquistador story and the original ending of this movie. In that same in-review online interview that I mentioned, Damian McCarthy also talked about the original ending that he had for the script, and he said Adam Scott's character was supposed to die in the basement. So rewriting the end of his treasure hunting story was also kind of a nod at the director of Hokum working through his own ending. And he has hinted that we may not have seen the last of that storyline either, because it's something he's been working on for several years.
My gosh, that is so exciting. I would have been bummed. I think if Ohm had died in the basement, I don't know, because I was thinking about Caveat, and I liked Caveat, but the ending left something to be desired for me. Like, did he get away? Did he not? I don't know. Is the girl locked there forever? What's happening? And I feel like I didn't get that closure. I feel like had Ohm died, it just would have been another sad, depressing horror movie. So I'm glad he lived, and I'm glad everything got turned around. So I'm really excited to see where the storyline goes from here and what he's working on, because I really liked it.
Yeah, I am too. I loved this. And I have a personal theory that the reason Ohm sees his mother when he does in that first time in his home, it's because she is trying to pull him out of darkness. And when he meets Fiona and she says that she doesn't like his bleak ending, and then she saves him from his own bleak ending, I think it's his way of thanking her and making peace with what happened to his mom, because he doesn't have to keep punishing himself and everyone else. And I love this. It's so hard to execute a horror movie that is scary and yet ends on such a hopeful and a satisfying note. I think Thelma is a great example that we just recently did. And I think this one absolutely is too. And I think he nailed it.
I agree. I really like this ending. I really like this movie. I really liked all the ways it made me feel and all the emotions I went through. There's so much sadness, but then there's hope and there's healing and there's good that comes out of it, even though there is bad and tragedy. And I just really, really liked it. And I like that piece that you hit on with his mom. The way I saw his mom through this was the way he was seeing his mom throughout the movie. How gory and how awful she looked was his own self-reflection of how guilty and dark and terrible he was feeling in that moment. So when we first see her, she looks really scary, really gross, really messed up. And we also learn that in this moment, he's kind of planning like his suicide, his end. And then as the movie goes on and he starts to drag himself out of that and come to learn to forgive himself, she starts to look better and better and better until she looks fully like his mom again. So I do think that this movie had to do a lot with that, like guilt and self-reflection and healing and forgiving himself for what happened.
And you can't stay here.
I know. Gosh, for a dude, Damian McCarthy does a great job of capturing that like motherly love and violence against women and cowardly characters. He does a good job. So congrats, Damian McCarthy. I like you a lot.
Yeah, same.
Okay, Eleanor. Now that we're through this, what did we unearth in our sandbox? Was this movie horror, a tragedy, or something else entirely?
It's definitely horror. But like I said earlier, it manages to end on such a hopeful note. And I love that. And I want some more. And I just can't wait to see what else Damian McCarthy has in store for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think, man, there's a lot to this movie, and it's definitely horror. But I do think this one does kind of hit too on that grim fairy tale piece again too. So maybe like like a folklore horror or a fairy tale horror kind of feel to it. But it definitely is a horror. But thank goodness it gives us a little bit of a happy ending. So it's not the most bleak horror I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I think it's beautiful.
It is. But okay, that does it for us today. So listeners, may the horrors persist.
And watch out for shroom milk. Thanks for listening to Horror Sandbox. No generative AI was used in the making of this podcast. For show notes, credits, and contact info, check out our website, horrorsandbox.com. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Horror Sandbox. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/horrorsandbox. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with all the horror fans in your life.